One's a classic, if campy, fight drama. The other is the same story through a new filter of culture and realism. The Karate Kid. They remade it. Hi, and welcome back to They Remade It. I'm your lovable host, Stuart.
I am the host, Jacob.
Not as lovable as me, obviously.
No, I can't even bother to speak properly. It's okay.
Got a bit of a drawl there tonight. It's just like, hi, I'm back.
I'm a bit on the slower side this evening.
I'm sure you're noticing by the different theme music that we are slowly expanding our operations here, so bear with us in this process.
Oh yeah, the new theme music that I totally put in.
Yeah, if you don't end up changing it, you're just gonna have to not put in a theme music at all, and that way that'll still count.
And if future me didn't put any music in, so help me.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put in like the Macarena or something, just out of panic.
Gonna get sued by Los Rios or whatever they are, Del Rios.
I guess. I don't know. I don't know anything about, who owns that sort of stuff. Anyway, welcome back to the show. Obviously from the title, as always, Karate Kid. So that's going to be our thing for the week.
Yeah, that's what we watched, and that's what we're going to discuss, right?
Right.
We're not going to bring up anything else strange that doesn't fit, like Flight of the Navigator, huh?
We're not going to bring up Ernest Cline again.
I thought you were going to say Ernest Goes to Camp.
I mean, it'd be a change of pace.
We could talk about that. I go for some Jim Varney right now.
Well, instead of talking about that, let's talk about how we've been doing in the last couple of weeks.
Okay, I will start.
Just the usual. Go right ahead.
So I never start. Honestly, I was thinking about it. I have not watched any movies outside of these two this week.
Well, dang.
These past couple weeks at all, which is weird for me.
Yeah, it is weird. I was about to say, I was like, "Are you okay, Jake?" Like, I know you've been talking. I know you've been talking slower and more drawled out this morning. The start of the recording, but
right,
it's still.
No, I've just been busy working. I've watched TV though. I went through and I watched the entirety of Wander Over Yonder, that cartoon that was recently on, I guess Disney XD, maybe Disney Channel.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Like, I keep seeing like fan art and stuff around. I never really had the desire to go into it though.
Yeah, I knew about it and I knew what it was about, but I didn't either. I went into it. I like it all right. I actually think it's pretty good. It's the same wave of all the other new cartoons that are coming out with the intertwined story and the lovable this and that. The only real, and it is pretty funny. The only real negative thing I have to say about it is I don't care for any of the character designs at all. And
I think that's a pretty big portion of a cartoon.
It is, but and I know we're on different pages on this, but I really like Aqua Teen, and it looks like garbage, obviously for a reason, but sometimes the writing and the humor can pull through for people.
Right. I guess that's true. It always gave me the impression of like Camp Lazlo kind of style.
Oh yeah, it does have sort of a Joe Murray. Well, it has sort of the line work and stuff of Joe Murray, but Joe Murray has designs that are off the walls with really jagged shapes, whereas Craig McCracken, if you look at Foster's Home or Powerpuff Girls or Wander Over Yonder in this case, it's the really thick lines, but everything's fluid, and it's like everything's made up of circles and ovals. You don't find a lot of sharp lines in what he does.
Right. It's a very curvy art style.
Yes, and I don't know. I think we're in a period of time where maybe that's not the art style that appeases people as much. We always go through phases, and I think the Dexter's Lab, Powerpuff Girls, Clone High, whatever, all those cartoons with the thick outlines and that sort of design have probably fallen to the wayside, and that might be one of the reasons that it didn't catch on as much.
Yeah, like there's kind of been that time has kind of come and gone, I feel like.
Yeah, like we always go through periods.
Right. Like, I've been going through trying to catch up on Steven Universe myself in a similar cartoon vein, but
oh yeah, I actually got fully caught up on that the other night.
Yeah, because I know a whole bunch of shit had happened. I still haven't caught up completely. I've just basically been like, okay, here's the basic things I need to know, and go.
Yeah. I actually did get fully caught up on the show with the most recent episode, the finale of the most current season, and at the end, I was pretty much just... I'm upset, and not for any plot-related reason. I'm upset that there's going to be another season. I think it's past the point of... I think it should have stopped a while ago. I think they should have just wrapped it up.
Yeah, it has had that kind of, like, they've been doing this whole, like, building up, like, this background story so much that to the point where it's like, there's not going to be any kind of satisfying conclusion because it's been going so hard for so long.
Right, and a lot of people say that the best way to do that, or to make it go quicker, is to get rid of all the stuff in Beach City, like where they're just talking to characters in character episodes. I don't think that's the solution, because I think that those relationships are important to the feeling and the themes of what Steven Universe is about. But I do think there are too many of them. I think there's way too many side one-shot stories.
Yeah, it's kind of like they're trying to do stuff like in Avatar: The Last Airbender, where, but the difference with that one is that they were constantly moving around, and so you constantly got different, like, slice of life situations, and they were still centered around the core characters. Whereas this one, it's like trying to center around a lot of these members of this town and everything that don't end up actually having any real bearing on anything.
No, they don't.
Which, like, I understand the whole thing. It's like they're trying to be like, oh, even the background characters have a story, but it's like, the problem with that is that when the rest of the show is still a cohesive story, you start to kind of wonder what the point of any of it is when none of it is affected by it.
Right. It's like they're building a really detailed background that doesn't matter at all.
It's like that one podcast you mentioned about the guys watching Grown Ups once a week, and they started just making making stories up for random background characters just after weeks and weeks of watching this crap.
Right. It kinda, yeah.
But yeah, like, along with Steven Universe, I guess the only other thing I've really watched, I watched some movie earlier this week, but now all of a sudden I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. It was a Disney movie, but it wasn't one that left that much of an impression.
The Great Mouse Detective?
No, but it was one from that general era, I think. Or
do you remember at all what it was what all it was about? I mean, Black Cauldron, the Aristocats, they're all from that.
Aristocats, that was it.
Oh, I was like, they're all kind of separated by art style, but they fall in sort of the same, I think, 2 or so decades.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, it was the Aristocats. And then other than that, I've been watching, like, some Netflix. I ended up watching some Queer Eye. That's a relevant one nowadays.
I've heard a lot about that reboot.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. It's very, very heartfelt, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Plus it actually reminded me of all the things I actually need to improve with my daily regimen. And I was like, okay, yeah, if they're saying I need to do it, I probably at least need to try.
Maybe I should comb my hair more.
Maybe I should comb my hair less.
Whoa! No, speaking of Netflix, what?
Subversion of expectations. That's what pays the Netflix bucks or whatever.
That's true. I was gonna say the only other thing I watched Wander Over Yonder, and I was watching on Netflix what is it called? The Disastrous Life of Saiki K, which is an anime that was picked up by Netflix.
I have never heard of that one at all.
Yeah, it's based on a shonen series. So shonen are probably the most popular things that come out of Japan anime-wise. Naruto and One Piece. So,
right.
It's from that same general family, and that one I actually really, really do like. I find it very funny. The main character's great because he's a psychic that over time has come to realize that he has to hide his powers or else people want to use him and whatever, which is fairly basic. But
I'm sure it kind of expands on that one.
Well, yeah, in that he's an introverted loner that tries to make people dislike him so that they won't be his friends, and he won't run the risk of exposing himself to them. And that is, I relate so much to that outside of having any sort of ability or talent. I relate to that sort of character style, and I don't know, it's a really funny show, so I like that too, and I've been watching that.
I mean, it's a cool concept. I always like the subversion, the subversion stuff, where it's just like, oh, here's this sort of situation. Like my favorite theory I'd ever seen is like, what if they had a superhero movie where the main character was totally afraid of the thing they were powerful with, like they could breathe underwater, but they were terrified of the ocean.
That is a great idea.
Yeah, just like kind of that whole thing of like, how do we make a show out of this more than
like
anything?
Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, just like that sort of thing. So yeah, I might check that out. What'd you say it was again?
The Disastrous Life of Psyche K. And if you're like me, the first season is dubbed. The rest of the seasons are subbed. I don't have a problem with sub stuff, but whenever I'm watching shows and movies, I tend to have them on the side while I'm working, so I can't really watch sub stuff. So as of now, I've stopped at the start of the second season, and I'm going to see how long it waits for a dub to come out.
Gotcha. I'm sure there's places online you can find it as well.
Oh, it just hasn't been done yet.
Gotcha.
Unless I want to watch some fan dub stuff, but not really, especially after growing to like these particular voices. So
Gotcha. It's like an old relative. You don't want all of a sudden them to be replaced.
Right, exactly.
Unless necessary.
But that's it for what I've been sort of doing.
I don't know what necessary situation there would be for replacing a relative, but I'm sure that's a thing in the future. There'll be some service.
If Nana won't stop talking at Thanksgiving, get her out of there.
So the beats of both movies is pretty much the same, so I'm just going to go through the plot of both of them simultaneously, and then right afterwards we can kind of, just break down the individual differences and the big differences, obviously, because there are a couple. But for now, pretty easy beats to go by. So, we start with our main character, lovable as he is, leaving his home in just city life in wherever he is to a new city, very far away from his family, other than his own mom. There is no dad in the picture for various reasons. Once they arrive, pretty much immediately befriends. He has a combination of immediate befriendment and immediate, just like, what's the equivalent of getting an enemy? Enemy-ment?
I suppose so.
Yeah, there's some form. It's just immediately a friend comes up. He's like, "Hey, I'm your buddy now." Okay, and then another guy comes up and they're like, "Hey, you are in some way imposing on my boundaries." In both cases, it's a girl, and they're like, "I'm gonna beat you up." So kid gets beaten up after ogling some girl in each case, and gets his ass absolutely handed to him because this bully in both cases knows karate, or at least some form of martial arts, which is another thing we'll be getting into, but I get ahead of myself. So, as things go on, we find our lovable protagonist constantly getting beat on and constantly getting the short end of the stick when it comes to his new life, and eventually comes across a karate school or martial arts school that he wants to enroll in order to better protect himself from these consistent bullies. Problem is, the consistent bullies are at this martial arts school, and so the moment he goes in, he walks right back out, and afterwards is then once again pursued by the bullies as a result of that. This eventually leads us, after X number of encounters with the bullies, we find the incursion of the local handyman, in one case Mr. Miyagi, in one case Mr. Hong, to help, get our main character out of a jam, just to beat up the local bullies and to just show the kid, hey, karate, martial arts, whatever, is a thing of peace, a thing of defense, rather than what these guys are doing it for, that being just straight up violence. So he is quickly taken under the wing and at least nursed back to health by the handyman, and they all then proceed, hey, we should probably go talk to the teacher that's teaching these kids this psychotic style of fighting and tell them to bug off with it. They go do this, and instead of it going smoothly and it just being like a normal conversation, the crazy teacher in both cases says, no, I like my kids beating people up, and you just issued a challenge in my eyes because I'm insecure or something, and now you got to fight. And the kid's like, no, and the handyman's like, okay, hang on, hear me out, kid. I'm gonna sign you up against your will in this tournament, and then I'm gonna train you myself, just to, protect you in some way. It devolved way faster than it should have like this, but whatever, who cares? You're gonna win. And so that's what happens. So as training begins, our main character is subjected to what appear to be menial tasks in order to, instead of actual training for martial arts. And he's all like, WTF? And he's just kind of getting all uppity about it. And by the end, he's eventually showed, all these menial tasks are doing, all these chores and various things, they've actually been giving you muscle memory of the exact moves you need to do in order to be a perfect martial artist. And so from that, they're able to actually build up some form of training with these, basic moves. They're kind of just hand motions, arm positions, that sort of thing, so they can actually start to block basic attacks. And from there, start to build up strength and balance and precision and that sort of thing. All the while during this, I should mention, there's this romance going on in the background. Like, the hitherto otherwise unmentioned girl from the very beginning has been kind of just macking on with our main character in both cases. Just kind of being there, being supportive, that sort of thing. Kind of mostly being a foil to, all the other negative elements in the kid's life. Which is, nice, considering he has an almost uncanny level of unfortunate circumstances in every case. But, and she's just always there to be like, hey, you're the best. Things are shitty, but whatever. Anyway, eventually the day comes. Things have been tough with the girlfriend, but eventually they kind of get worked out. Family life's weird, yada yada. Eventually the day comes for the big tournament, and the kid does super, super well until the semifinals, in which the enemy, bully, martial arts school says, hey, we're going to actually physically break this kid in order to protect our egos, and try to break his leg in order to disable him completely from the tournament, but ends up going backwards because, lo and behold, through the strength of willpower and belief and heart of the cards, whatever, the kid wins. He's still able to, beat the ultimate bully at the very end with some really awesome move that really should not have been possible in any case. But, he does it. He does it through the power of will and love and help from Mr. Miyagi/Hong. And that's it. It just kind of ends right there with him holding the trophy. Or, well, it ends in one case with Mr. Miyagi staring at the camera, smiling and nodding, and then the other one with, with Dre and Mr. Hong walking off as he's like, hey, my leg's still broken.
That was both movies very well done, very expertly done. All right, so before we go into analysis and comparing all these huge differences, let's go into my new favorite segment, Full Circle. Yay! So, yeah, the Full Circle this week is probably going to be really short. Actually, I know for a fact it is really short. There are no actor, producer, director ties from either of these movies to any of the movies that we've done so far.
That's kind of surprising, considering that there's a fair amount of talent on display, at least for the newer one.
Right. Now, this is a bit shallow, but that's the stuff I'm sort of analyzing. Directors, producers, maybe even composers.
Right.
Because once you start getting into the details, there's a lot of people, and they all do good work, and they all do good jobs, but I don't have time to go through all of those. There are a lot of connections from these two movies to movies we've done in the past, with visual effects workers, sound effect workers, and I think on 2 occasions, maybe for True Grit, stunt talent. There are connections there.
Well, that's something at least. But yeah, otherwise nothing too major.
Right, nothing major that I'm going to bring up. Otherwise, if I start going into theirs, this segment would be like 5 to 6 minutes alone just naming off all the visual effects and sound effects people that coincided.
Yeah, that might be a bit much for just a little bit
Right.
like this.
Right, I'm trying to be reasonable. So that's that.
Well, we definitely should get down to the nitty-gritty differences with the two films, because plot point-wise, pretty much the same, minus a couple specific beats. But otherwise, between setting, between motivations in a lot of ways, and between a lot of character arcs, there are some significant differences. For instance, the setting in the original, he's in California. In the remake, he's in China, which is not out of the realm of similarity. Like, he went from an eastern location, in the first case New Jersey, in the second case Detroit, to a more western location. It's just one was very western.
Right. Those are probably the most significant changes.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
I'd say probably the second most significant.
Yeah, I mean, like, it kind of leads into the other main difference being, in the first movie's case, in the 84 movie, I'll just refer to it as 84. In 84, it was the style of martial arts they were doing directly was karate, versus it was kung fu in the 2010 version, because, karate isn't nearly as popular in China as kung fu is. So, and plus, Jackie Chan was playing the mentor character, and so he knows kung fu. He doesn't know specifically karate. I mean, I'm sure he does know some karate, but he's famous for his kung fu. Plus, he could do his own stunts with kung fu, so it's kind of 2 for 1.
Right. And that sort of that actually kind of upset me. It really did.
Yeah, a little bit, because, like, it's called Karate Kid, and it's not karate. you can't really get much worse on that one. It's like it's like
the whole point of calling it Karate Kid is to let people know that it's a remake of a movie that already existed, and that it takes story elements and plot beats from it. But the fact that not only is it the fact that it's not karate, it's kung fu, but that they deliberately bring up 2 or 3 times in the film, like, oh, so you're learning karate. No, it's not karate, it's kung fu. Then why even bother?
Yeah, it's a little weird. And, like, I guess Kung Fu Kid would have been a little weird. Like, that sounds more like an early 2000s YouTube video.
Yeah, I gotcha, but I don't know. It's if in the newest Star Wars trilogy, like, Han Solo's like, we're gonna go fight a Star War, and Rey's like, we don't call them wars anymore. It's a battle. It's a star battle. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get what you mean. It's like, yeah, if they hadn't mentioned it, it would have been fine. Or if they had mentioned, oh, karate is simply one part of kung fu or martial arts as a whole. But otherwise, it's like, there's no reason to deliberately bring it up. It's like, it just kind of makes the whole thing feel awkward.
Right.
But, to not dwell on that one, I guess we can go into the other more minor bits. Main one being, I think the next main one is the motivation of the love interest. In 84, the love interest was an ex-girlfriend to the main bully. In that case, I think it was Johnny Lawrence.
Yeah, it's Johnny.
She was the ex-girlfriend to the main bully, versus in 2010, they knew each other because they were just like a couple of upper crust families, but she also had a very restrictive household, so that was kind of the drama of them, whether or not they'd be able to be together versus whether or not they'd be able to be together because the bully was like, no, I'm getting my girl back, sort of deal.
Yeah, I've harped on things in the past with the romantic subplots or plots, or that being the motivation, just because it seems like a really cheap way to do it. But
right,
if I'm being fair and I'm being honest, having romance as a way to drive a story forward, it's done a lot because that really is how things work. A lot of people do stuff like that for romantic leanings or love or marriage or whatever. It usually does end up tying to that. So I understand that when you get into the beats in the 2010 one, with it being the relationship between the bully and the main girl. They're like there's no romantic tie there. Their families are really close.
Right.
And then because they're young, they're like 12, I think the movie says. It's never brought up as a romance thing, like I want her to be my girlfriend. It's always friend. That seems like less of a motivation that would actually work. I don't think I'd go to such great lengths to make friends with somebody.
Well, they do make out at that one point.
They do, but
I'd say
it's not really touched on.
I'd say, well, yeah, beyond that, it's not really touched on. So it's like they still refer to each other as friend. So
right, it's always brought up as a friend deal, even to her father. Whereas in the '84 one, they do dates. It's more romantic.
Right.
I don't know, the whole beat of it, the way it lays out.
Yeah. Guys, just be one, all that stuff, but don't want to be more than friends. Am I right, fellas? Wait. I'm not relatable. Don't relate to me, people, please. I'm not. I'm not an example here.
Who are you trying to appeal to?
I don't know. I just know that this would appeal to somebody somewhere, I'm sure.
Oh, that's good. Let's just appeal to anybody.
Yeah, screw
just
it.
Because that's my goal. Okay, so
I was about
that.
I was about to say some terrible stuff to just be like, "Hey, and so you white nationalists out there," and I was like, "No."
Hey, all you white nationalists, eh? That's not so bad.
I mean, it could be better.
I'm a little iffy on it. I'm a centrist, a white centrist. So, what was I even gonna say? So I actually something that stood out to me a lot when I was going through these is color. Mm-hmm. I think more than anything else, the setting and the scenes, obviously in the 2010 one, are really vibrant, and I mean vibrant by location standards. There's a lot of really magnificent architecture and locale because,
well, yeah,
they're in China specifically. They're showing off the country, but the colors don't really pop. It's like a real grimy,
right,
sort of rustic urban feel. Which, I mean, that's where they live. But even when they're in the mountains and when they're on the Great Wall, everything is sort of pallid behind this hazy grayness, and I'm not sure why. For a while I thought it might be trying to reflect the mood or maybe the emotions of the characters, but it was in like every scene they had this tint, sort of.
Right.
Rather though, in the '84 one, everything it's just a lot more colorful. That everything is constantly popping in the scenes. Miyagi's whole area that he has at his home that Daniel's constantly improving is always really colorful, even when it's nighttime, because there's lights everywhere.
Right.
They have sunset shots at the beach. It's just a really colorful movie, and part of that is a product of it being from the 80s.
Right, and that's like one major point I was going to get onto, is that if there were ever the best example of comparing two films of remake versus original from like 80s to the modern era, this one's probably about the most apt comparison you can get, because it's such a comparison of like the changing of film style.
Oh yeah, you can definitely see where things have swapped in decades long past, I guess I should say. A very to sort of stay around colors and light, a very popular trend of the early 2010s was lens flares.
Yeah, that was
light.
That was a pretty big one. Good old J.J. Abrams coming in.
Right, and just lights shining at the camera in general, and the 2010 one did that a lot.
Yeah, and like personally, I can hardly say that hasn't been done in the past. Like, you know, Spielberg is, you know, famous for having his whole spotlight thing, like having a light source behind a subject. But that is a pretty common thing I've seen now. It's where it's a very blaring light to show a very just comparison shot, like, oh, everything's dark and now everything's light and everything's changing the scene. It's like,
Right.
I'm iffy about that one
It's
personally.
it seemed really, yeah, it didn't really seem like it had a place though. I could think of one time where it sort of really did bring out that comparison feel, like, well, now everything's light, it's all together. And that was when they're at the performance, they're at the theater,
Yeah.
where that puppet show is going on, and Jaden and the other girl, not other girl, the other kid who is a girl,
What
they're
was her
behind
name
the
again?
theater. I don't remember.
That one was a little forgettable, I won't lie.
Yeah.
I want to say
So
it
was
was
Mr. Han.
yeah, Han, like, come on, like, Mr. Miyagi, it's so,
Miyagi.
yeah, but, I guess we're kind of waffling back and forth there.
I guess so, yeah. But regardless, that shot, I sort of got the light that was coming in. I don't think they needed to flash it in my eyes, but I understand its purpose for being there.
Yeah, like, it always seemed like the early 2000s were a lot of early progenitors of, some more artsy style things like that. Like, not necessarily artsy, but more like, avant-garde in a way, being like, oh, it's, something that you wouldn't, in any other sort, period of filming, you would never shine a light directly at the camera, but now we're doing it, because screw you.
We're breaking conventions. Doesn't that make us cool?
It's like, well, I can't argue that it makes you cool. My eyes do hurt.
I had to leave the theater and rinse them out in the eye wash station.
It's like, I don't suffer from, I suffer from mild epilepsy, and I don't know how I got it from this one, but you sure as shit did it.
Thank you, Karate Kid.
You've somehow created a form of epilepsy that doesn't require it to be flashing.
Thank you, Karate Kid. Thank you, Kung Fu Kid. You've both done my eyes a service today.
Yeah. I mean, like, the point you make with color is really kind of just does really bring me back to the point of that there is just such a concise look at how different remakes can be from their counterparts, especially from the 80s to, like, the mid to the 2000 to like the mid 2000s to 2018 kind of range, where
Right.
just all of film style has changed a lot. Like my most noticeable thing to me was the shot structures in most of the in the 2010 version were very, for lack of a better word, intimate. Like, they were much more close-ups, much more character centered pieces, versus the 84 version being wider shots that feel a bit more chaotic, a bit more, in a way, realistic, because you have audio from like 6 different people kind of overlapping each other, like as people are talking in a room or that sort of thing, or in the very beginning when all the family members are waving people goodbye, which I've mentioned in the past, like 80s movies can do chaos and widespread noise and bigger groups a lot better than a lot of other eras of film have, in my opinion. And that's a big difference I've noticed, is that older, like in the original and movies of that era, very broad, and they kind of feel a bit more like you're standing in the scene with the characters, because it kind of like it seems like you're just watching it from a few feet away, versus the new one, it's very tight in, so you can really get like it's a lot of more focused facial acting and that sort of thing, which I'm not necessarily saying is lesser in any way, but it's definitely different and feels a bit more, it kind of loses a bit of the familiarity feel you kind of get with the original ones. It kind of makes you feel like in 80s movies, it kind of feels like you're invited, you're part of the scene, whereas whereas 2010, it's like, oh yeah, you definitely wouldn't be this close to this person right now if you were here.
No, that's actually a good point, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it makes me think how a lot of movies in the past sort of had that naturalistic, maybe it wasn't so natural in that's how we talk, but it was natural in that it felt like an actual conversation. Things moved right next to each other. Sometimes they would overlap because that's how people do things, even though maybe the voice you could tell was being acted on.
Right. Like it was dubbed over or something.
Right. I think or just the fact that it is a person reading from a script, so even though it can overlap, it's a voice that we may not talk as. So
Right.
But we have moved away from that a lot. People, it's a script, act with it. There's not a lot of naturalistic tendencies in movies and shows now. A lot of people stop. It's like your dialogue, my dialogue. Wait for the sound. Wait for the laugh track if it's a sitcom.
Yeah.
I think that's why stuff like home movies and Bob's Burgers became such hits and such a novelty with the way they do that, is because no one else was doing that at the time. But it's not a new thing. This has been around for this way of speaking and interacting with each other in media has been around for a while.
Yeah. And like
even if not to that degree.
And even that kind of the difference isn't even just in the shot structure and like how zoomed in and how people address each other. It's pretty much it permeates every part of the film whenever you think about it. There's so much of, there, like you said with the color palette, it feels very vibrant and very like, oh, this is probably how we imagined it being, like kind of naturally, like, in California it's going to be all bright and colorful, versus in modern China it's going to be kind of drab naturally, but at the same time it kind of loses a bit of personal feel. It's like, all right, we're kind of more watching a set than we are watching, some actual thing going on.
Right. And to sort of bring up that that feeling of closeness that you were talking about, like everything's sort of packed together and you feel like you're a part of it. The 84 version has a lot of times where you feel like the story or the environment is moving on or happening while the camera's not focused on it.
Oh, yeah.
Or while you're paying attention to something else. Like, it's not just extras moving in the background. My favorite thing from this movie, when I think about it, is probably in the at the ball that they're at, where Johnny is dancing with her.
Oh yeah, like at the country club dance or whatever.
Yeah. And he kisses her, and Daniel is watching through the kitchen window. When that pot of pasta like falls on him and everyone starts staring at him, it cuts back to the crowd, and you're looking at all these people like gasping and guffawing, and you're supposed to be looking at like Johnny laughing and the girl being so upset. But if you look to the right near the background, you can see her father, not framed at all, and if you read his lips, he's saying, "Honey, look, that's the boy from blah blah blah." Like, they're actually having a conversation that's not being focused on. Like, they're real people, and this is a real thing.
That's interesting. That is a really cool feature of older movies, where it's like they really do seem to have this whole effect, because they can't get away with adding extras in post or anything. All those people are actually there, and they're having to directly interact like this whole thing is actually happening. So that's actually really cool.
Yeah, I noted that specifically, and I think I rewound it 2 or 3 times to make sure. But that's definitely sort of the thing he's saying, and I thought that was neat.
Right. Yeah, there is something lost. Like the more and more I think about it, like what the phrase I always come back to whenever I think about the difference in lack of personal intimacy with these characters and everything. Even though the new one tries very hard to make us feel for these characters, the original, it just goes very out of its way. But like the original just has so much heart to it. It's just like I could not like. I've always seen older movies. I always kind of give crap to older movies and everything. It's like, oh, they're very predictable. They were we've seen them redone a million times, and they've become basically parodies of themselves as a result. But then I watched through these movies, and I'm like, watching through on their own, these are incredible. They're so fun and vibrant. Like the scene when they got to the competition at the end, where they go in and it starts playing "You're the Best Around." I can't tell you how many different things in my life I've seen aping off of that. And like just using that song specifically, and I went through this and I was like, no, this feels natural. It feels great. I don't think this feels out of place or like a parody or anything. It's fun. It's vibrant. This whole thing is action packed, and I was actually feeling for the characters, even though I knew for a complete godsend fact that he wasn't going to lose. I still felt tension and stress, and I was loving every bit of it.
Right.
And it's just like everything from the just the shot structure to the characters, especially the characters. Oh my god, like the characters are crazy, but like, and the, you know, the main character Daniel, not exactly much to go home to talk about, but like, you know, his mom has a cool arc to it. The love interest, even the bullies, and especially Mr. Miyagi. Like, oh my god.
Oh yeah.
Like, I didn't know going into this his backstory. Like, I had seen not the original, the 2010 Karate Kid when it first came out, and so obviously I knew going into that. But then comparing that to Mr. Miyagi's backstory, like, you know, Mr. Han's backstory being, you know, he got his wife and child killed because he was driving angrily in the rain or something, and like, you know, it was sad. But then you bring up Mr. Miyagi's backstory of his wife, like while he was deployed in World War II, his wife, who was in an internment camp because she was Japanese, or at least Okinawan, she had miscarried because there were no doctors to help her give birth, and so she and the kid died while Miyagi was deployed. Like that shit's heavy. It was like, and just the scene where he's crying over the photo and he's wearing his sergeant uniform, it got me, man. Like that's one of the better that's one of the better written characters I've ever seen with that whole deal.
This is actually because I had seen the original before, a long time ago, actually, at an aunt and uncle's house. I remember. I don't remember that scene at all. I don't even remember, like, oh, I watched it, but I was little, so I didn't get it. I don't remember that being in the movie.
Yeah, admittedly.
So when it came up, it sort of surprised me.
Admittedly, when you think about it for the whole aspect, it doesn't immediately add anything to the plot line. Like, if you had missed that scene entirely, it probably wouldn't have affected too much, other than just us empathizing, or not necessarily empathizing, but making Miyagi even more human. Which, like, you know, it builds up to that point. Oh, he's just this unflappable badass who knows he knows karate and is helping this kid just for no apparent reason. But then it drops that bomb on us, and it's like, oh my god.
Right. It gives more of a reason as to why he would take such a liking / protective stance towards Daniel in the long run. And that's mimicked in the 2010 one as well. Like, it's a different story and a different reason for the death and the sadness, but I feel like it's more direct, and you can feel that is the reason that he is doing this, is because he feels he relates.
Right.
And he feels like he relates to Jaden's character over this, to the point where, to bring up something a little off movie, the back of the 2010 Karate Kid box literally states Mr. Han having a sad past.
Oh, that, yeah. I mean, like, within, like, to its fairness, it is played up a lot in his character. Like, that's a main gripe I have between the movies, is that Mr. Miyagi is so charming in every way versus Mr. Han's just kind of sad. He's very time. It's like Miyagi, you know, Miyagi's like, he seems like not necessarily that he's moved on, but that he's still grown and that he's still interesting. But Mr. Han's just kind of like, all right, he's just eating ramen and like sitting in his little shack doing nothing. It's like, all right, this is just depressing.
Oh god, maybe that's why it was gray all the time, because no matter what the main character's feeling, what is his name? I keep calling him Jaden. Dre?
Dre, yeah, Dre.
Wasn't it Dre? Okay.
Dre Parker.
No matter how happy Dre is, or no matter what he's doing, Mr. Han's always depressed, and that's probably why the entire movie is gray.
Yeah,
because he's never happy.
Yeah, it's just reflected throughout the whole thing, and I think within fairness that like the whole grayness can be attributed to the fact that newer movies tend to try to make a more realistic look of the environment, and China as a whole, since it's so old, a lot of it's just going to come off as gray and kind of dusty. But at the same time, that doesn't really give you much of an excuse of, come on, like, brighten up it a little.
Right. Well, Mr. Han's life is a mess. We get he eats a bug. Can I break this for a second? That's disgusting, and I don't care.
He doesn't eat the bug. He wipes it like there's a you can see him
On his
wiping it off.
chopstick, yeah.
Like he wipes it off of his chopstick, but he doesn't wash the chopstick. He just kind of like brushes it off and then immediately starts eating again. So it doesn't eat the fly itself, but it's not much better.
I understand that. I understand that's what I meant, but still, like, it's supposed to be like his life is a wreck. Whatever he's sad, I get it. I get it.
And
but why?
Oh yeah, you go ahead.
Well, that just takes the character. I don't care about him now. Maybe that's a really shallow thing, but they did that and it didn't really build up to anything. It was all for a joke, for funny haha Will Smith kid to go, that's nasty, and then the scene ends.
Well, I do like it for the fact that it would kind of subverted what it had going from the first movie, which I thought was really funny because I hadn't seen the 2010 version in forever, so I didn't remember that scene happened. So I see, you see him holding, like, obviously in the original, Mr. Miyagi attempts to catch a fly with chopsticks, and then you see in the 2010 version Mr. Han starting to like aim towards the fly, then all of a sudden he brings up a fly swatter out of nowhere and just kills it. It's like I thought that was really funny.
Right.
Like just
maybe
how,
I'm
just
thinking
how
a
sudden
little.
it was.
Maybe I'm thinking a little too into this because it was funny and I didn't know that at all because I had not seen the 2010 one, so I didn't know that happened. Thinking of it logistically though, why did he like smack it and then take it off the? I don't get it. Why did he do that?
I think he was like I think he's just kind of like.
He wanted the fly juice on his chopstick to mix it in with his ramen.
Well,
that's my canon reasoning.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, if you didn't think about it too much, I wouldn't know who you were, and just been like I knew for a fact you were gonna bring this scene up because I remember it.
Well, thank you.
So yeah. Don't worry, it's pretty normal.
Yeah, that is something that sort of stuck out in my head. I don't know. I don't think that bit was kind of funny, and there were a couple points in the movie where Jackie Chan did kind of make me laugh. I don't think that. Why did they give so much funny dialogue to Jaden? Because it wasn't really funny. The scenes were funny, and then he said something about them, and they instantly stopped being funny.
Because I think they were just trying to build up Jaden Smith as like a kind of a character, or just as an actor, that sort of thing. I don't know. I mean, like it feels very much like his dad trying to get him into a movie or something. Because like you can see in the credits of like on-set photos where his dad's just around all the time. It's just like,
right.
This is a little weird. It's like I think they're trying. It's like they're trying to make another Will Smith. It's like it's not working.
Hey, it's the Fresh Prince of Beijing, my son Jaden.
Ain't he just a thing?
He's being taught by Rush Hour himself, and now I'm gonna go fly to my mansion with my wife and my daughter who sings songs.
With my wife who is, who is the namesake of my son, and my daughter who is the namesake of me. You ever notice that?
Yeah, I did.
It's Jade and Willow, Jade and Will, and then Jaden and Willow. It's like fucking Jesus.
It doesn't even make me mad. It's just it's kind of embarrassing. It's like I would hate myself if that was like the reasoning behind my parents naming me and my siblings. I would be very upset by the time I was cognitive of it.
The boy named Jaden.
I'd be like, "Are you serious?"
It's like, this is a really boring remake of the boy named Sue.
The Boy Named Sue already had a sequel. But let's not talk about that.
Yeah, okay.
So another thing I did want to bring up though, because I think I've been going a little hard on the 2010 one. They had some cool things that they did.
Yeah.
By way of location, the fact that it's like actually China.
Oh yeah, I thought the shots in like just the various places they went were incredible, and if nothing else, it made me really want to go to China.
Right, and I don't know, it's called The Karate Kid, but they use Kung Fu. Kung Fu just seems and seems to be more of a mystical thing with ties to chi and energy more so than karate is, so they can do cooler things with it. I much prefer the fire glass light bulb healing technique that they use in the 2010 one, as opposed to Mr. Miyagi rubbing his hands together
Which
in
the
the 84 one.
right. And the fire thing is an actual alternative medicine technique. It actually, to briefly explain, it creates a small vacuum in the jar that he puts the fire in, and then it creates suction on the spot that you put on the skin, and that in some cases this isn't scientifically proven, but it's still shown to have a positive effect. It kind of like encourages the skin to think, oh, there's inflammation here, direct white blood cells to help heal this area faster, and that sort of thing. Or at the very least, it numbs it a bit.
Though the intention behind it is definitely supposed to be sort of a mystical.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like that's
deal. The way they play with the fire. There's a lot of close-up shots of the fire on the stick every time he does it.
Right, exactly. And the fact that it's a green flame and you don't know what exactly he's lighting on fire, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I do like that.
I do love the choreography that they've got going on in the newer one. And the original definitely felt like a couple of California white boys just being like we know how to kick your ass in a really cool different way.
I'm gonna kick your ass,
basically. And versus this one very much feeling like this is an ancient tradition. This is an ancient form of style that these kids probably have a line of family who have been doing this for their entire lives, and so it's kind of a very interesting traditional feel to it that you don't really get in California. I don't think there's anything traditional in California.
Probably not. I wouldn't venture to say. I don't know much about the area.
The tradition of California is to not have tradition.
I guess the fault line.
Yeah, I guess the earthquakes are pretty traditional.
Yeah, it is tradition to get sucked into a hole in the ground. But regardless of that, there was something that was bothering me. It's sort of harping back to the friendship thing again.
Uh-huh.
How do you feel about that resolution with the side plot? With him and his friend, small girlfriend, whatever, where he goes and reads that letter in, I guess, Mandarin to them.
Yeah, it's Mandarin.
And the dad's just like, in this family, we keep our promises, and then they smile and everyone laughs and it cuts to black. Like, why? That felt... I didn't even think that the side plot was that bad outside the fact that the whole friendship thing wasn't a good motivator for me. I didn't think it was done that bad.
Right.
But I don't think it was resolved very well. I feel like it was just like, okay, we got to resolve this. Let's do it.
Yeah, it felt like, versus the original where, it was very directly a love relationship and there was misunderstandings with the whole situation. It felt like that resolved a bit better, and also just her presence in the tournament at the end kind of made it feel like, okay, she's part of things now, everything's better. Versus, I think they're trying to go for they're trying to address the whole thing in China where it's like, families can be very conservative, they can tend to be kind of restrictive when it comes to relationships like this, but they kind of just end up being wishy-washy about it. And so it doesn't really do anything, and you barely even see her again after that point. Like, the tournament starts basically right after that scene, and you see her in the stands cheering for him, but that's about it. And it's just kind of like, okay, done deal, moving on.
Right, she's just like, she's there now. Whereas in the 84 one, they actually do have a funny bit with that where they sneak her in by saying that she's Miyagi's
he's the translator. And of course Miyagi says, "You're welcome," and then they go in.
Yeah,
that was actually a really good bit. Again, I love Miyagi. Miyagi's character is just perfect.
Dude, Pat Morita.
Pat Morita, just a godsend. Bless that man.
He was gold.
Yeah. But yeah, I did notice that. And it's like, and it seemed like they were trying to build up the relationship thing. Like, they had the whole bit where it had like that weirdly long scene of watching her dance to Poker Face, And it's like, this
Yeah.
is weird. This is a 12-year-old girl, at least in canon, at least in the movie, and we're watching her basically seductively dance in front of a kid and in front of the on screen. But more importantly,
Right.
I was like, this is getting a little weird.
And
It did that for like a solid 30 seconds or more.
it really did. And bringing this up, if we're going to talk about this real quick,
Yep.
I'm showing my bias. I don't think that one is necessarily better than the other, by way of scores or technique, but I prefer the music in the '84 one just because I like '80s music more.
Mm-hmm.
Both movies do have composition in them from the movie's composer. I don't know who did '84, but I know James Horner did the 2010 one.
Right.
But they also mix in popular music of the time, and I don't know. I like that "You're the Best Around" and "Cruel Summer" by Bananarama a lot more than I like "Poker Face" and Justin Bieber's "Never Say Never." So
And then what was the there was another song near the beginning, like when they were on the plane. I can't.
That's right. I don't remember the name of it, but I thought that was hilarious because while that song was playing, the credit came on the screen that said composed by James Horner, and I was like, I don't think he wrote that. That's the first thing I thought.
That's true. It's gonna bug me now that I haven't seen it, but it did. The song choices were a bit better in the '84 version. The new one, I guess it didn't age great because there weren't a whole lot of songs that were quite as decade spanning as the songs from the '80s. So you kind of walk a thin line on that one.
That's kind of true. A lot of '80s pop, I'll say,
Yes.
sounds the same to one another. Whereas I don't think you can really pick any genre from 2000 to 2010 and have the music all sound the same. A lot of pop sounds different, a lot of rock sounds different, and that's because they're all incorporating elements of like techno beats to it.
Right. It's got a very different feel to it overall.
Right. I do think the music in the '84 one definitely dates it though. Just that's Bananarama.
Yeah. But it's good if it gets dated and it's still good.
Right.
It's the problem with the songs in the 2010 version is that they're not bad, but they're also not memorable.
Right, and I guess that's sort of getting more into a subjective area, which
Right.
a lot of what we're talking about is subjective just by the very nature of it.
Right.
But,
You guys tune into this show. You're just listening to our opinions, right?
yeah. Who are we to say that Lady Gaga is objectively terrible? And Justin Bieber too. I don't care for his music, but there are plenty of people out there that do like it, so I can't say it's objectively bad.
Yeah.
It's not how it works.
I would have loved if they had done like a Mandarin rendition of Poker Face. I would have loved that a lot more.
That would have been great. I would have downloaded
I
it
would
on
love
my iPod.
I would love to hear Mandarin Gaga.
Dude, I'd put that on my Zune. I'd listen to it every day on my walk. It's my favorite rendition of a Lady Gaga song ever.
Jacob, you're dating yourself again.
I do think that the what?
Nothing.
Trying to be serious here. I think that the main strong suits, we've touched upon it already, but if we're gonna say that anything is good about the 2010 Karate Kid, it is that China exists.
Basically, yeah. If we're like you can go on, we can go on about like the technical aspects, like the shot structure is cool, and they have some cool shots of like various situations, and it seems like some of the character acting is a bit better, but it basically does boil down to China exists. China is a very interesting culture that this movie very much wanted to touch upon more than anything else. Also, with the fact that it was directly associated with a couple Chinese production groups, so it's
right.
if the whole point of it, I mean, like I said before, I went through it, and my main takeaway was I really want to go to China now. I think that was kind of their point. It's like, with True Grit a couple episodes back, where it focused more on the environment as a character. it kind of did that in this one as well, but almost a bit on the touristy side.
Yeah, they're in league with Pan Am.
Like, for context, this is the first movie since like 1987 that was allowed to film within the Forbidden City, which is the place where the Emperor of China, like his palace, the Emperor of China's palace.
Yeah, last one to film there was Mulan.
Yes, Jacob, that came out in 1987.
Yeah. Oh, 87, sorry. Mulan was like 1990, 97 or 98.
And it was also animated, so they didn't film in it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I know there's a name of the other movie that was filmed in, but I can't be asked at the moment. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love the snake scene because it's like, and it was also kind of a cute little homage there, right? Like when you first see it, it's a person doing crane style kung fu facing down a cobra. So it's basically just the ending scene from the original where he did a cobra,
right.
He did a crane kick going against Cobra Kai. But
Cobra Kai, dude.
And I did like the whole thing, like how that she was face charming a snake with her eyes.
Right.
Which I've looked it up. I cannot find anything confirming whether or not that's a real thing, but
that one lady can do it.
It wouldn't surprise me if it were, but like, it just seems like a bit of a hassle when you get right down to it. It's like you got to take the snake out onto this ledge, then you got to get out there with it, make sure it doesn't jump off on its own, and there's a whole deal with it. And then when you're done, what do you do when you're done? Then you're just kind of like walk off and leave the snake there, or do you have to put the snake back in a bag, or what do you do here?
I want to see snakes filing off a mountain one after another like lemmings. I think that'd be great.
My God.
No, it's not really a comparison, but there's one more thing that I want to talk about that I can think of, and that is, I don't remember his name. Bobby Butterworth, Bobby Buttersman.
I have no idea.
The Cobra Kai fighter in the 1984 one, who was first instructed to get Daniel out.
Oh yeah, the first guy to disable him. Gotcha.
Yeah, and he's apologized. Dude, I love that guy. He is the unsung hero of the movie.
What do you mean?
He does what he's told, but the entire time he has this nervous face on him, and he immediately breaks. He's the only Cobra Kai that seemingly has any sort of sense or morals about him. I like that. I like that in a character. You're good by me, Bobby.
Yeah, that was a weirdly dynamic moment from a movie that basically had everyone else in shades of gray. I mean, in shades of not in shades of gray. Everyone was either black or white.
Right. They in the new one, they really did take to heart what Mr. Han said about whether you win or lose, they'll respect you as long as you put up a good fight. Because at the end, they're all bowing to him, and it's like, oh yes, respect.
Right.
For what has happened. But in the 84 one, it's just like, we lost. This sucks.
Yeah, because this is a bunch of...
And they all left.
Because it's a bunch of fucking, rich dudes who are high on power from their literal ex-military instructor. So it's like...
That's true.
It makes a lot of sense versus, for as much as these kids in the 2010 version can go on about how their master teaches them to be harsh and merciless, they still have at least a mutual sense of honor.
I guess they can get away with that easier too because they're kids. They're like actual kids.
Yeah, and like kids are going to be, I think, kind of more buddy to each other at a certain point. Whereas once you're at kind of older teenager level, it's like, nah, screw you.
You're more set in your ways. The older you get, the less willing you are to change to suit anything.
Right.
You're sort of fixated. That's just life.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that works. But yeah,
that was so that was kind of a cool moment of character difference. But it also does kind of show if you delve into it, it's like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense how these characters would have reacted given their age and their setting.
Right. I like him.
But yeah,
I'll keep that there.
I'm trying to think of any other particular points, but it really does always boil back down to, the basic level stuff being, is it better to be on the more technical level of, cooler choreographed scenes and a cooler environment to be within versus actual fun characters and fun settings and everything. And I think that's
That's true.
It's not exactly a hard choice, granted, but still.
Right, at least in my opinion. There again, there are things that both do well, but this is the first one in a while where I'm pretty decisively like, yeah, the '80s the '80s one did a significantly better job with
Like,
a lot more. I can praise the setting all I want in the 2010 one, but that barely makes up for anything else that happens in the movie. It's so heavy-handed with its emotional cues. Like, we're less than 2 minutes into the movie and they're showing us a close-up of the mark on the wall that says "Dad dies," and then it zooms in on Jaden's face and he gets upset. It's just there.
Yeah, it's very, it's kind of almost like a parody of all the much more touchy-feely type movies that started coming out, like it kind of attempts at coming-of-age dramas that were more very character-based versus than what this movie actually was supposed to be, i.e. fun, kid learning to grow of himself rather than just grow emotionally. It's just like,
right. It really makes me wonder what the point was.
yeah, it kind of went all over the place. Versus the first one, it's very direct with what it is. It's, this kid's a hothead. He learns respect through discipline and everything. And I did like, that was actually like very briefly, just as an aside. That was kind of a one thought I had about the whole situation was, in the first one, all the guys there are very much not Asian, and the Cobra Kai guys were taught by an ex American army man, versus Daniel being taught by a direct descendant from someone directly from Okinawa, and who had learned karate his entire life. So there's kind of it kind of makes it a bit more okay that this is a technically an outsider to the culture is learning this technique, but he's learning it rightfully as it's meant to be used and learning the culture behind it. Then you kind of see some like the new one where where the main enemies are people from this culture who are directly grown up in this culture being taken down by an outsider to it. But it seems a little odd whenever you start to think about it. It's like, how are we meant to feel about this?
That's true. It really paints a weird picture in that this is sort of the only connection we get to kung fu as well, outside of Dre, who is this American boy. All the audience gets to see is people that use kung fu in China, they're all assholes. They're all taught by psychopaths that show no mercy, and from people within the culture, that it just doesn't feel right.
Right. Like, it made a whole, like, I loved that about the original one because it made a lot of sense what was happening. It was an ex-Vietnam veteran who had been taught just brutal hand-to-hand combat just, for his basic combat needs, and kind of abusing that into teaching kids to become basically hardcore soldiers, versus this other kid learning it from someone who has seen how it's been tainted. And then you go to actual China, and the only instance we have of it being taught honorably is just some random bum, essentially.
Yeah,
it's like it's a little weird, and I wanted to think around it, but it's like, nah, that's kind of hard to ignore.
Yeah, and if we're talking about this fighting way too, this is something that bothered me as well. And this is sort of the last point that I want to bring up that I can think of that matters. It's really cool how when Miyagi is teaching Daniel how to do karate, it's all of these basic motions, and he's using it to his own end, which is funny, and it makes him a badass, and how stoic he is about the whole thing.
Yeah, that was awesome. And it's so
but
iconic.
It ends up... Oh, yeah. It ends up being useful to him as well. And then we get Mr. Han teaching Dre, like, one thing. Like, he teaches him a lot of things, but in the style of that basic activity. Right. He only gives him one chore, and it's another heavy-handed emotional thing. It's all based around, like, respecting his mother. And at least 5 times, I think, Dre's like, I get it. I need to respect my mother. And he's like, pick the jacket up again. I don't know. It just felt like it was more heavy-handed, like immediate message
and even
than anything else.
And you could even make the argument in the '84 version that doing all those menial chores was in a way also respecting one's elders. It was, helping out around the house sort of deal, but also it's character building. It's meant to actually build what you are and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and they didn't have to bluntly say it either. Of course they had to have a scene where he's like, "Come here," and then he has him do all the motions, and then he ends up blocking Miyagi in that really fast-paced hand movement scene,
which it also was a lot more realistic than when Dre was blocking Mr. Han, and Mr. Han's doing like full on like really complicated movements versus Miyagi kept it relatively simple. Even when he started mixing it up midway through, it was easy enough for someone who had been only briefly learning that to pick up on the motions. Versus with Dre, he just picks it up immediately. Like what? And there was
He's a god.
Yeah, and there was no muscle buildup for Dre's situation. He was just tossing a jacket. Freaking Daniel was, sanding an entire outdoor, floor surface. He painted an entire fence with one very specific muscle movement, and he painted an entire house the same way. That's gonna build up some muscles.
Yeah.
It's like at least some, or at the very least, they'll create a more distinct muscle memory than just moving a jacket a little bit.
So, yeah, that's totally how I felt about it, seeing it too. I was like, I can't get behind this.
Yeah, and not to mention just the fact that Kung Fu is inherently, at least as it's presented in the film, is inherently more complicated than karate, and yet he had the less complicated training regimen.
Yeah, he had to worry more about focusing his chi, which requires meditation.
Yeah, which they never even bring up the word meditation, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, I would have brought it up once or twice, or had it on a wall in the background or something.
Yeah.
I'm not a fighter. I never took any of those classes, but I'm pretty sure that's a big part of it.
Right, or at least just the Buddhist culture in general.
Yeah. So I think at this point it's pretty fair to say that both of us are in a complete agreement.
Oh yes, we both absolutely adore the 2010. It's the 1984 version. It's an absolute classic. It's fun. I had never seen it, and I absolutely adored it going through it. I really was anticipating going through it, being like, oh boy, it's gonna be like really campy and over the top, and it was, but it was awesome.
I loved it too. There were plenty of moments where, like in the scene at the country club, there were plenty of moments where I rewound a few times because something was funny, or because there was something that caught my eye in the background that I had to double check on. Like, did that happen, or was that character really doing that?
Right.
So it fully kept my attention instead of just being on.
Like, for all the effort that the new one went through to be more detailed about being more technical about how people's motivations were going, it still seemed like the original had more going on, and there were more details to pick out like that were more fun. It felt like it did it effortlessly, which I think is the mark of a good film.
And I'll say that the 2010 one put in a lot of effort.
Yes.
And you didn't end up getting a whole lot out of it, because where you could see effort, it either comes across as hackney or ham-fisted. So
it's a very good movie about China. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, it's a travel movie.
As a good suggestion, if you really want a cool kung fu movie that's very realistic, check out Ip Man, IP space MAN. Really good. It's basically the same thing, but an actual kung fu movie, and it's not. It's directly made from China, and so it's very accurate in everything it does, and it's really cool. And
you are always hyping it, man.
I freaking love it. It's probably my favorite fighting movie. Yeah, I figured I'd give like a suggestion or two every now and again.
Not a bad choice.
We might do that more often. Whenever we say we don't like a movie, whichever movie we don't like, we'll try to give a suggestion of an alternative.
Okay.
Maybe that's not a guarantee thing. It's just like if we come up with one.
I can't think of a lot of kung fu movies I've watched that I've really enjoyed. I saw It Man 2. I liked it all right.
Yeah.
So just go watch It Man.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's a few sequels. Some of them are good, some are not. It's kind of your call.
Yep. So that's sort of it. Any closing remarks?
You're the best around? I don't know.
You are. You know what? No, you, the audience that may or may not exist, because I can't see you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're there. How do I know? You are the best around.
Schrodinger's listeners.
And you can go out there and rate us on your preferred listening application. As I come to understand, we are on 3 right now. We're on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. If you want to go find us there, leave us a review, give us a like, or don't give us a like. I don't really care. And share. Please share.
It really does help us out a lot. You know, all kidding aside, we'd love to get this out there more, and you guys can help out whenever you can.
Yes, it would be vastly appreciated. So,
if you got a family member that enjoys the rambling opinions of a couple of young adults, then you look no further than Jake and Stu.
If you got an old grandma who really likes Ralph Macchio, you come to us, or I guess you point her in our general direction.
So yeah, I'd say, and then didn't you also say you're in the process at least of forming a website now?
Yeah, the website is in the works. It is nowhere near finished yet. Yeah. I don't even have it live publicly, even though it is working, because I am not a fan of the design layout. So that is there, but it is not done. So
that's coming along. And obviously, you know, as I mentioned before, thank you for bearing with us as we're slowly refining our process here. We, you know, tried to work hard to make sure everything feels a bit more professional this time around, and
yes,
we're just hoping we can get as good as we can get. So, you know, if there are changes, there are changes.
Oh, and crap, I forgot. So go ahead, send us an email if you got a comment or a suggestion to theyremade@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter. Hopefully I'll be doing more of that in the future. At it remade on Twitter, and I think that's it.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sure we'll get it, you know, refined down. We'll give all our social links all in one go, but you know, it's a bit homegrown here. That's the beauty of it.
I agree.
So, yeah.
Okay.
I think that I've said my piece. You know, 1984 Karate Kid's the best. Go check us out. Give us a review. My name's Stuart.
My name is Jacob.
Enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Practice.
Yeah, you need to try it.
No, Mom.
Yes, Dre.
Mom.
Dre. Ask him. Go ahead. Ask him, what's your name and how are you? Do it now.
你好吗？出身木吉吗？
Dude, I'm from Detroit.